scared of the
It
spacing.
doesn't work. It only works in Google Slides. Maybe back to the previous one.
PowerPoint.
Just delete it.
My
Delete it. No.
God.
The first line.
Can I also go to my?
Yeah, great. Cool. Okay. Where's the other room? Cool. Yeah. I think maybe we need to switch the projector. The next, do we need to turn on the projector now? We could. Turn off the lights.
All right. Welcome to Halves Day 3, the last day at Halves. Yeah. The teams will be presenting 15 minutes, 5 minutes for questions. I'll keep track of the time for you guys. Keep an eye on me. We'll be presenting about where you are at the halfway point, where you're going for the rest of the semester. Yeah, I think we're about ready to go. So, yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone. We're Team Avalon Blues.
And before we start, imagine with me. Imagine as an African American who lived or grew up in a state where Jim Crow laws were actively practiced. African Americans, citizens, are severely mistreated and even murdered by white supremacists. And the only thing can calm you is to return home, listen to the music and sweet tune that your grandfather plays by the front porch of your house. Let the power of music heal you. And when you grow up, you go to a museum and you see pictures of your grandfather displayed as a blues legend. You hear musicians playing his music, talking about his life. But a lot of things they're saying about your grandfather is wrong. For example, the person who rediscovered him as portrayed by the white media is the same person who sold his music copyright to label companies. And even until this very day, you and your family gets nothing from the revenue of those music. And on top of that, the very gravesite that hold the soul of your grandfather, as well as many other African Americans around the same region, is currently desecrated by white supremacists right in front of our face on October 7th, 2023, just last week. This is Mississippi. This is the story of Mary Frances Hurt. And this project will serve as a voice for Mary, as well as a band-aid for her spiritual bleeding. And this is a team that's going to carry this project. Next, please. So this is Mississippi John Hurt, the grandfather of Mary Frances Hurt. And he's a country blues musician active in the 1960 folk music revival.
So this is an interactive installation that will be located in the Mississippi John Hurt Museum in Mississippi. So our goal is to capture the life, challenges, and the legacy of Mississippi John Hurt, and also to deliver the narrative true to his history and capturing the exploitation of his artistic creation, as well as the hardship of the African American communities in the Mississippi Delta region. So we're working closely with the two clients from Mississippi John Hurt Foundation, and their goal is to provide, preserve the music legacy and also provide educational opportunities. So our main client is Mary Frances Hurt. She is the founder and president of the foundation, and also she is the granddaughter of Mississippi John Hurt. And we're also working with Valerie, who is also the co-president, and she's also a musician. So this is the agenda for today. So first, we're gonna talk about the overview of the project. And second, we're gonna talk about challenges and solutions. And third, we're talking about the Mississippi research trip. And lastly, we're gonna talk about the plans for the future.
So here's the little overview. We're gonna quickly mention our target audience, installation, the media content, as well as the art style. For target audience, we're looking to present to young adults from 16 to 25, but also we're presenting it to the blues enthusiasts, lovers, as well as blues musicians that comes to the museum. And this is a very brief sketch of our installation. We have three components. We have a display screen, and then we have a retrofitted radio with a timeline on that. And then we have a knob that for the guests to tune into the timeline so they can jump into a specific chapter of John Hurt's life. And this is our two possible installation space. On the left side, you can see this green field, which is a property of Mary Frances Hurt. On the right side, you'll see a cabin, which is where John Hurt grew up and lived. But it's very compacted with a bunch of artifacts, so we don't want to disturb that. So we end up want to use the St. James Church on the other side. This is also a very historical site for African Americans around the same region because this is where they get education as well as get their the prayers and religious purposes. So this space is much more spacious, and we're going to use this one for installation.
So this is an imaginary rendering of the installation and the environment around the installation. It looks like that. And our guest experience will be divided into the following 4 steps. So first, the guest steps into the church, and the guest sees the installation with a radio and a display screen. And then guest tunes the knob on the radio to adjust the John Hurt's life timeline into one chapter. And finally, guest watches the short video of that chapter with narration and John Hurt's music. And our video will consist of 3 parts now, which is 50% historical film footage, 35% historical photos, and 15% 3D animation created by us. And you may be concerned about our right to use this footage, but this installation is for an educational purpose. So we believe we have the right to use them. And second, ETC legal standing means that we are indemnified for such use.
When we were creating those video content, we found that actually we don't have enough historical footage for that. So we have to create those historical footage, some of the part by 3D animations ourselves. We have to do it fast and make the art cohesive. So we created a shader in Blender to make the raw 3D models without texture directly into a specific style that matches with the historical content, which is a film noir black and white style. And here would be a sample video showing how we how we combine those two animations together.
Almost overnight, this humble musician from Avalon, Mississippi, became the blues legend of his generation. But that would all change in 1965. At the height of his success, John decided to step away from the musical spotlight and return home to Avalon. The death of his son, TC, is what brought him home to be with his family. Just 4 months later, John himself passed away.
So we faced a number of challenges very early on with this project. One of the biggest being just gathering information relative to the topic and making sure that we're portraying it in a way that's accurate, as well as difficulty weaving that into our cohesive narrative and challenges relative to actually building this part of the project. So when we started this, none of us knew anything about Mississippi John Hurt, and we knew relatively little about blues history. So this led us to create our own internal timeline and use all sorts of public documents to try and piece together this story, using resources that we assume to be trusted, like the Smithsonian Archives. However, when we went and presented this timeline to Mary Frances, we were quickly confronted with the fact that a lot of this information was demonstrably blatantly incorrect. Even obvious things like his date of birth were not accurate on any of the resources that we were checking. So since then, we've been working very closely with Mary Frances to get our information clear and have our own information internally, and as well as find ways to incorporate and share that truth in our actual installation.
About the narrative structure part, we both want to cover John Hurt's life and African-American history content to make our project more educational. We know it's very hard to cover the heavy history in such a short experience, but we decide to weave those historical points into John Hurt's life. We briefly mention those points, we let people aware of it, and they will research and remember it. We divided John Hurt's life into 4 chapters in a timeline into our radio installation's turning bar to narrate interactively. The chapter 1 would be John Hurt's early life. He worked in railroad while practicing playing guitar. And for the African-American part, we would cover the labor's working conditions. The second part would be John Hurt's first success. He launched his first record in New York City in 1920s, but went back to home, continuing working as a laborer because of the Great Depression for nearly 30 years. And we would cover the murder of Emmett Till event. The third chapter would be John Hurt's rediscovery. He got great success in American folk music revival period in 1960s. About the African American history part, we would cover civil rights movement and the 16th Street church bombing. The fourth would be John Hurt's legacy, where Mary Frances Hurt, as the granddaughter of John Hurt, established the museum for him to protect his legacy and spread the story.
So one of the biggest challenges for us has been considering how we can make sure that this installation is operational for as long as possible. So very early on, we opted to use a rotary encoder as the only method of input because we believe this to be pretty robust and relatively unlikely to be destroyed. We haven't been able to break it ourselves, but we're going to see if our playtesters are able to do that. We are planning on powering both the input and the video output currently with a Raspberry Pi 4B, which is what we've used for our prototypes. And we due to lack of air conditioning in the space, this is a good fit because it only needs to be passively cooled. Similarly, we've been donated an industrial-grade TV by Electrosonic that is designed to operate 24/7 in hot conditions. So this seems likely that it will last as long as possible. We also plan on including an operation manual as part of our deliverable with setup and quick fixes for things that might arise, as well as provide a looping video mode on the device for our client and give them the actual source files for this looping video so that if the entire device fails, they can connect another device and just have this video running on the installation.
So we went on a Mississippi trip this last weekend, and we're able to actually meet our client, Mary, and we had the opportunity to talk to her and listen to her experiences firsthand. We got an understanding about, not entirely, but we have some understanding about the hardships and ongoing discrimination. And we were also able to actively involve the client, Mary, in this project for a mutual vision. And we're also able to conduct a playtest with her. So we have this cardboard prototype. It's not going to be the actual prototype we're going to use for the later on playtest, but we showed the videos that we have, and we were able to get some feedbacks from her.
And here's some future plans onward. We're going to quickly show you the production timeline, and then the art and video production process, and then the playtest as well as delivery. So very briefly, this is our production timeline until the end of the year, which is the delivery date. And next, please. And I know when we see we're making our own animation, some people are pretty concerned, but with our style and with the next upcoming 4 weeks, we're gonna try our best to finish all the simple animation and then combine that with our videos. And here's our plan for playtesting. We're gonna use a brown box prototype for playtesting for week 8 and 9. And then we're gonna use our retrofitted radio, which is something we're gonna acquire recently or in the next couple of days. And then we're gonna use that for playtesting for week 11 and 12. We're actively working with Anthony as well, so it's very possible that we're gonna bring a bunch of high school students coming over to UTC to playtest with us so that we can see if we reach our educational I guess points and educational, yeah, sorry. And here's our delivery, and we're open for questions.
It's a really powerful project. I'm worried. I'm actually worried about a couple of things. You said that the copyright of his music isn't even held, maybe by the family, and that you understand you can make the videos and not worry about educational use, and that's true, but if you're gonna make things that are installed in a museum, I think you do have to pay attention to the provenance of the material and who holds the IP, and ideally you clear all of that so it can be in the museum, because otherwise there are forces that will wanna take this down, and you will lose the legal arguments to those forces. So I'm not sure if you are following up on, can we use these video pieces in an open museum installation? I think it's important.
Thank you, Mike. We are making an educational project, and then the museum is also nonprofit by the foundation. So we are going to try to use the fair use, as well as the fact that ETC is indemnified from this. So we're gonna try to communicate with our client that this video has this copyright, this video, is like public domain, so they understand, and then they'll be using that. And ETC is not. We want both non-legal trouble for both ETC as well as the foundation, but we're gonna closely look into it.
So a known problem with potentiometers is that after about 5 years, they tend to get a little noisy. The signal can be noisy coming out of them. Are you making plans for the long term with this installation?
Yeah, great question. So we actually are opting to use a rotary encoder instead of a potentiometer for that reason. Because when we were looking into it, it seemed like it was more likely to last longer. Likewise, we have considered delivering for those parts of the project, delivering 2 so that the client can simply discard and replace the entire thing if need be.
Okay, I would love to talk to you guys about helping installations last for decades. Yeah.
You go first.
Okay, I was going to ask a question about, do younger audiences know how to use a radio tuner?
We're gonna find out.
Are you worried about vandalism on the site?
So I guess we can talk about how many people are coming into the museum first. The museum is very like a closed experience. It's locked by Mary most of the time, so it's not like an open museum that everyone have access to. In order to go to the museum, you have to make an appointment with Mary, and she'll be here to like unlock it, and then people come in to see it. And then sometimes it's the students, coming in the bus in 10 to 15 people. Sometimes the blues musician. most of the audience, we anticipate to be very respectful. But on top of that, Mary will be there to stop any vandalization. Yeah.
Any further plans to try to match the aesthetic of the animation a bit more to the tone of the content and the videos? Or are we seeing kind of more of the final product in your demonstration?
Actually, we tried different styles. This is for now, but we have different ways. We can make the black and white shader with more details, add possibly some normal maps to it to make it with more detail. We're also trying if we can change it to color, so there will be more contrast between the historical content to the animation.
Okay, let's follow up.
Quick question about the granularity of the video segments. You talked about 4 different highlighted segments. Are those like long videos and you have to dial to the next one, or are they at smaller granularity? So if you turn it more, you get another segment, more division than just 4 large ones?
There's in total 4 videos, and then basically 4 area of like kind of tuning. Each video lasts around, there's one video that's 3 minutes long, one is like 1, so around like 1 to 3 minutes. And then when you finish, when you tune the knob, there's gonna be a static transition to the next video, so that it kind of look like a radio aesthetic, but in total it's 4 videos.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, it's time. Thanks, team.
Hello, this is Team Cheat Code. We are the generative AI game team. And
Hi, I'm Chloe, the 3D and 2D artist on the team.
Hi, I'm Felicia. I'm the UX UI designer in the team.
The VFX artist in the team.
And I'm the programmer on the team, James.
yeah, we're single programmer and 3 artists, and I'm the producer of the team. And our advisor is Mo and Ricardo. To briefly explain about our project, our purpose was to explore possibilities of generative AI in the game development. And we had to deliver 2 main deliverables, game demo and a documentation. So as you see from this slide, it was a very open-ended project, and we spent a week for research and ourselves a game jam to put our hands more on the AI, learn more about AI, and lock down on the direction. So what we learned from the game jam and the research, currently generative AI in the game industry was expected to used mainly in 2 purposes. First, to enhance the productivity for the developers, and secondly, to enable new gameplay experience for the players. So some companies like the Activision, they fit their own artwork and make some concept art. And Ubisoft and other companies were using to set a narrative and make a bark for the NPCs using the Gen AI. And some of the companies were working on reading the motion or speech to facial expression animation, and some of the games were already using procedural generation and Gen AI to generate some part of their maps. But at the same time, we learned that because of the legal issue and some of the limitations of the technology, many of them were still remaining in the lab of the companies. And they were good at generating 2D, but not at 3D yet. And also sometimes generative AI makes some incoherent styles. And also to make them drive the whole design of the game, they usually made 2 generic design choices. So with this learning, we came up with the design idea, which Chloe will explain.
So the biggest crucial advice that we received from our project advisor, Ricardo, was creating something only Gen AI can offer in gameplay. This was not a question of what to make, rather a question of how we're going to make it. And this is our game pitch. Our deliverable is a 2-player game. It takes a place in a supermarket, which is a very convenient place for us to mass populate the environment with many assets. It's filled with odd items upon the user's input, and the groceries will be populated real time and reflected on the scene real time on fly. In terms of aesthetics, we spin the table, and with the incoherency of the generative AI, 3 of our artists found it as more of a safe space for us to explore and be bold, rather than to try to keep everything under the same style and so on. And the next video is our current latest demo. It doesn't play. I'm sorry. So the player 1, as you can see, typed in apple. Player 2 typed in man bun, thinking that, it will give us a person as in a bun. So player 1 has to look for the player 2's input, and player 2 has to look for player 1's input. So based on the riddle, player 2 got close to the answer. However, the player 1 won. I guess player 1 found the objective before. So this is the art and aesthetics that we are going for. The left image is something that we use as a reference, and then the right image is something Midjourney gave to us based on our prompt. And this is the character design / model that I made based on our aesthetics. As you can see, it has a very bulbous head, which offers some asymmetry in terms of balance. It has some mischievous and fun motions in terms of animation as well. This is the current environment we have right now. Definitely more assets will be added, and it will be more polished in terms of lighting as well. But I added some halftone dots in the texture to offer that market flyer-like halftone dot style. Now I'll pass it over to James for tech solution.
So I'm going to talk about the tech solution. So we use the Unreal client server listen server mode to achieve the multiplayer functionalities. Basically, we let the first player be the server and creates a game, and let the other player be the client joins the game. We use the Unreal AI system to build the NPC character system, including the path findings and other AI behaviors. And to make DALL-E and ChatGPT work integrate with our project, we use this plugin called HTTP GPT. Basically provides the Unreal blueprint nodes for Gen AIs. And I'm going to talk about here how Gen AI works with our project. So in our scene, the supermarket, it has 6 areas: the fruit area, meat area, bakery area, snack area, dairy area, and the others area. So before the main game starts, each area has many shelves like that. And before the main game starts, it will loop through each item on the shelf and randomly choose a texture from the categorized library. So we have a pre-made texture library for fruit, for meat, and other areas. And after the player enters an item name, it will use DALL-E to generate the image of that item. Like if you type pineapple, it will use DALL-E to generate an image of pineapple and put it into the market. In our second prototype, it will also use ChatGPT to categorize the item. Like if you type in pineapple, it will ask ChatGPT that upon these 6 categories, which category does pineapple belong to? And it will then put the pineapple texture into the fruit area. And finally, it will use ChatGPT to generate some hints and riddles of that item, like give me some descriptions or riddles about pineapple. And here is our early prototype, our first version of the game. So basically, there are 2 players, the guard and the thief. The guard will type in an item, an apple fish, and his goal is to guard the apple fish. After the guard type in the apple fish, it will use DALL-E to generate an image of apple fish and put that image into the scene. And then the other player, his goal is to steal the apple fish. So he needs to get into the scene and then try to explore where is the apple fish and steal it. Well, the first player's goal is to catch the thief before the thief got the apple fish. So we held a playtest after we finished the first prototype, and here are some feedback we got. We found there is some issue with the fairness between the 2 players. Like the first player as the guard seems overpowered compared to the second player as the thief, since the first player's only job is to catch the first player. And we also found that generative AI is really not part of the core game in this prototype. So like we only use ChatGPT and DALL-E 1 or 2 times in the beginning, and other than that, this game is more like a catching and tagging game. So I need to finish.
Thank you, James. I will talk about iterations. So we first focus on emphasize the fairness between 2 players. In the second prototype, we equally involve both players throughout the game experience. For example, player 1 input applefish, and in response, an image of applefish will be generated in the game environment. At the same time, player 2 does the same thing, but this time with the output of bug milk. Then each player is receiving a riddle which pertains to items the other player generated. In this case, player 1 generated applefish, but according to the riddle, she has to find bug milk. In order to win, players have to solve the riddles and try to be the first person to locate the items. We believe this solution provides a balanced and competitive game experience throughout the play times. And the second feedback we receive is a lack of involvement of Gen AI in our core gameplay. Originally, we only used DALL-E to generate image in the game. As a result, we expanded the use. Currently, we use ChatGPT to generate riddle, which serve as hints for player, as well as a categorization system, which James mentioned before. The expanded use of Gen AI is not only allowed us to provide engaging and meaningful hints for player, but also allows us to populate and customize the game environments with the imagination of the player. Now I'll hand the microphone over to Li Yi.
So after changing players' interaction with AI, we have our second playtest. We noticed that players want to interact with each other during the game, and the player's word input is usually uncontrollable, so ChatGPT generated is very hard to understand. And there are too many items on the shelf, so it's very hard to find out. So we might need to improve and refine our gameplay design and make our game experience more intuitive. Based on feedback, our future planning iterations are to implement the instructions and opening scenes, have more fun interactions like players laugh with each other, and players' words input generate more power-up items and limited items on the shelf.
So in overall, the challenges we had as a project team was first, it was very open-ended blue sky project. So we had a lot of probabilities, but we had to decide and narrow down our own directions. And secondly, compared to the expectation everyone has on the generative AI, how fancy it could work on, we had a lot of limitations of the current stage of generative AI, so we needed to make wise decisions on the design. And there, we felt it's quite hard to actually make a fun, playable game with meaningful involvement of Gen AI. And in terms of schedule, we are going to hit 2 more milestones and 2 more main playtests, and then wrap up our prototype and finish our documentation. Special thanks to our faculties and playtesters. And now we are open to questions.
What are your plans for sound? It could be very interesting to lean into the generative AI possibilities there, and or just make the game more fun and crazy with using sound effects and music.
Great question, thank you. So in terms of sound, we're currently exploring the service called Musicify. It is a machine learning plus artificial intelligence platform where it can turn any voice or sound input into any other instruments. So we're trying to weave that through with possible other sound AI platforms to create the background music, sound effects, etc. But as you can see from the animations, it's going to be a little goofy, but also a little bit eerie to tell that there is something wrong going on with this dream, perhaps a nightmare, etc. Thank you.
A lot of multiplayer games lean into having multiple level designs as a way to kind of create variation. Are you going to try to have a single level, or is multiple levels out of scope, I guess is what I'm asking.
We are not really considering multiple levels for now, but once we polish on the competitive mode, we are also thinking of probably developing a co-op mode, but we have to play test first and see how it works in terms of scope. Yes,
Charlie. You talked a bit about the difficulty with getting consistent riddles, and you talked about fixing it on the user prompt side, which is good. I was wondering, what have you tried or plan to try about fixing it on the generative AI ChatGPT prompt side? Have you tried classification, whatever, prompt engineering?
I think we haven't trained the model right now. We just use it for testing. So later, after we have a clear idea about it, we may try to train the model to make it more stable.
Thank you.
So, hello everyone. We are Team Terratopia, and welcome to our half presentation. So first, let me introduce our fantastic team. We have Meng, Yuxi, Yan Yan, Ye, and Jess in our team. And our instructor is Heather and Shirley. For our client is Laurie and Diane from main campus, and also we are having B as our consultant for research as well. Our client wants us to make a VR experience that allows the player to experience the challenges brought about by climate change. Specifically, players will immerse themselves as dolphins in oceans, countering the issues caused by climate change, and end up in a sense of hope. Our target audience is high schoolers and adults. Since that our client wants to produce a series of similar experiences in the future, so that they can make the player realize that climate change is really an issue concerning the entire natural world. So our project needs to be designed for future development as well. Some people might ask, why do we need to make a VR experience in dolphins' perspective to illustrate climate change issues? Well, we found the answers in some research studies. Embodying animals in virtual reality has been shown to reduce compassion fade. In other words, we can use this experience to help the player get aware of the climate change issues as dolphins. In order to make the immersive experience playing as dolphin, we have also experienced some similar games as here. So here, let's take a look of a short demo of our main gameplay. So you can see it's like a bad word. You cannot really see things, and you are hunting for fish. And yeah, you're trying to find a way and dodge the red tide, the And if you hit on obstacles, there will be a signal that you are hurt, injured. So I'll hand the mic to Jess.
Okay. In order for us to have the player to experience different climate change challenges and as well as making it a hopeful experience, we went with more a cinematic experience approach. We're breaking it down into 3 different phases. One is a healthy environment, one will be a destroyed environment, and then eventually be a restored environment. And so for our main parts of our gameplay, the player will use echolocation to navigate and to hunt, and also to navigate different environmental challenges. And for our game, that will be red tide. So in the beginning, we're going to have the player start off in like an open environment in the ocean, where this is where they'll learn how to echolocate. And the idea is they'll start in the open ocean with their pod, surrounded by a lot of dolphins, a very healthy environment, and they use echolocation that will take them to the coast where there's a bunch of mangroves. The reason we chose mangroves is because it is a really robust environment that has a lot of fish species, and when it's really healthy, it's a great place for dolphins to hunt fish, because a lot of fish use it as nurseries. And so the idea is that they'll end up be echolocating to this environment where there's lots of fish, and they'll be able to, learn how to use this location and understand how beautiful this area is. But then, in order for us to show how climate change is affecting this area, we had the challenge that climate change happens over like years or decades. So we came up with the idea of doing a time warp, where the dolphin will be led into this tunnel where they'll be presented with like a cinematic experience, kind of a video that shows the destruction of the mangroves over time. We're going to show excavators ripping these mangroves up because they are destroyed to make beaches or shrimp farms. So once they come out of this time warp, they will be in this destroyed environment in our phase 2. So there'll be less dolphins with them because there's not as much food source for them to have a big pod. There won't be as many fish, and the mangroves will be destroyed. So from here, we're going to show the red tide. This is an actual picture of red tide in the ocean. And so this, what we're going to be going for is like having this red tide come in, and you can see where it's killing the fish. So the idea is that you're going to be trying to avoid this red tide to get around it, because it's harmful, and by still trying to find fish that you're hunting. But eventually you will be engulfed by the red tide. And so we're trying to make it where it completely clouds the player's view, and there's like this feeling of hopelessness where there's nothing here anymore, and it's really destroyed. But in the distance, when you echolocate, there'll be a faint signal that there's something in the distance, and you'll go towards that area, and that'll take you to a restoration area where you come out of the red tide. It'll be cleared up, and you'll see some plantings of mangroves, and the fish will be coming back. So to talk about how we're going to do this process, Megan's going to take over.
Thank you, Jess. So I'm going to talk about our designs and progress of our game. We're basically, based on our story, we divide our designs into 3 main parts: the 3 C's, level design, and gameplay. The 3 C's represents the control, character, and the camera. For the control part, since we are embodying a dolphin, the less controller we're going to use, the more immersive it will be. So instead of using both controllers, the right controller is the only controller that will be used for the game, encompassing both forward and backward movement as well as the echolocation. And rather than relying on the controllers, we are using headset to serve as the primary means for the rotational movements. In addition to the character, we are having designed the dolphin to be round and cute, and a portion of them will swim around the character to actually see what the dolphin looks like. And for the camera, since we are using VR as our platform, the motion sickness is always a problem that we should deal with. So this is the actual movement that we have in our game, and we adjust the speed and the rotation rates for after several playtests, and use a headset to do the rotation instead of the controllers to get rid of some of the motion sickness and also be more immersive. So for the level design part, we have enhanced our overall environment and encompassing factors such as the environment setups, 3D modeling, and potential for player interaction and collisions with the environment. As you can see, this is the overall environment of our game. And we use basic geometric shapes in our initial level design and construct the game world. And replace with the real assets. The properties of each element will be recorded. As you can see, this is the real view in our game for phase 1 and phase 3, which is the good environment. And we'll have, this is what it looks like in the bad environment. And you can see the visibility is bad due to the red tide. So talk a little bit about our art part. We do some research for the elements that we are trying to put into the environment, and also make different kinds of 3D models, the skybox, the shaders, using Houdini and Unreal. So now Yue will talk a little bit about our gameplay.
So next, I'll introduce our gameplay. The first main gameplay in our game is the echolocation. The player can use echolocation to navigate the directions and the objects. The dolphin can perceive the outlines of the objects, such as fish or the rocks, and the echolocation feedback will be different based on the distance between the player and the object. If the object is far away from the player, the outline will be fainter and the reflected sound will be less clear. On the other hand, if the object is more close to the player, the outline will be more clearer and the reflection sound will be more immediate and intense. And the dolphin can use echolocation to navigate the fish. And after they find the fish, they can catch the fish. So let's talk about those fish. Those fish can swim randomly in the water. And if the player is swim to the fish will run away. And when they touch the fish will disappear and be consumed by the player. And additionally, in our destroyed environment, the player needs to avoid the approaching red tides. If they go into the red tides, they will be hurt by the red tide. And those yellow blocks are just the placeholders so far, and we will replace them by the dynamic materials of the red tide. And we also invited our clients and the classmates to do the test. And we got many valuable feedbacks from them. So first, they want to use their hands to catch the fish. And that's because there is a virtual hand in the VR character. And secondly, the rotation speed is too fast for them, and some players feel motion sick. But for the positive side, the players did indeed feel that use their head to direct the orientation makes them more like a dolphin and enhance the immersive experience. And next, you see, we'll talk about the challenges we have.
So I will be talking about the challenges we faced and how we solved them. So first of all, VR is a forward renderer, which means that we don't have access to post-processing or volume rendering. So initially, we had implemented volumetric fog to really give that sense of being underwater with limited visibility. However, when we packaged this into our VR headset, none of these effects were rendered, as you can see in the images above. So our solution to this was to mimic the sense of fog by using 3 spheres, such that as we go from the innermost sphere to the outermost sphere, the opacity of the sphere is increasing. This way we can fake that depth that you get from foggy, murky water. So here is how it looks from the player's perspective, and along with that, we plan to use material functions in Unreal to really blend the transition between the spheres and introduce movement into the water. Our second challenge is that climate change is a long-term issue, and it is hard to find sufficiently representative imagery to convey and to help players experience the consequences of climate change within a 3 to 4 minute VR experience. So our solution is the time warp, the second phase of our game, which Jess had explained earlier, where the players will go through and see a short cinematic time lapse of the destruction of climate change as they swim through a mangrove tunnel. Our third challenge is that we need to find a balance between creating a hopeful game and conveying the despair and the seriousness of climate change. So our solution to that is to tell the story of mangroves. Essentially, we want the audience to go through an emotional curve of first seeing the beautiful mangrove ecosystem, then seeing the destruction of the ecosystem through climate change, feeling the desolation of a barren environment, and finally feeling hope when they see the mangrove restoration project. And our final challenge is that this game requires an underwater scene with 2 states, the healthy and the destroyed, as well as fully animated dolphins and fish, which is a larger scope for a team with only 1 artist. So we plan to take advantage of Iliad AI for procedural tileable textures, as well as procedural models with randomization to create many different versions of different objects, and to focus our animations on the dolphin and the fish, as one of our key interactions is catching fish, and we really want to convey how dolphins are very social creatures that hunt in pods. And now Yan Yan will wrap things up for us.
So in the following weeks, we will keep holding the different playtests and adjust the level design based on the result of the playtest. And we will finish the tutorial in phase 1 and anything in phase 3. And we will keep replacing the white box models with the finished art assets. So in summary, we are making a VR experience that allows the player to experience climate change challenges, and they will immerse themselves in this experience. And they will solve these challenges as a dolphin. Thank you for listening, and we're ready for questions.
When I'm done playing, what do you want me to feel?
At first, you will feel some negative feelings because you have seen the destroyed environment, but you will end up in a restored place that you will overcome all the challenges and the bad things and end up in a good environment. So we will increase your empathy toward the dolphin and realize that climate change is really an issue. Yeah.
Happy, sad, what emotion?
Hopeful at the end. Yeah.
So you may have said this already and I missed it, but how is the client going to use this? Is there a plan of how the client wants to use this? Is this just for research, or are they going to take it to, students? What's up?
I think the idea is they want to continue this, make it maybe a series, like maybe with multiple different other species, but they are still trying to decide where exactly they would like to present this. That's why we haven't really, it's like adults and high schoolers. So yeah, we're still trying to talk to them about that, of like where that would belong, I guess.
Have you guys had a chance to test how the video transition in VR is going to feel and how that is going to affect someone in VR? You know, does it pull me out of the experience? Does it disorient me? In first-person mode, then I'm watching a video in a time warp. And going back to Chris's question, what's the emotional impact of that? So if you guys had a chance to test that out.
So at first, we plan to render two things in that time warp tunnel. So you can see what happens in 100 years to the environment. You can see it turns from the good environment to the bad environment in the tunnel. But we haven't really tested that because we finally have that on Quest 3. But previously, we were developing in Quest 2. So that it's not we can't really render two camera things in that. It's too expensive. But right now, we have Oculus 3 right now, so we can be able to turn on the mobile HDR to allow us to do that. So we will test this in the future, in the following weeks. Yes.
How concerned are you with scientific or behavioral accuracy of your dolphins and your fish? Are you talking to marine biologists? Are you worried? I mean, one of the things I think about is dolphins are different from fish because they have to breathe, for example, right? Are there going to be things like that that you want to try to incorporate into your game?
Yeah, so talk about it. We do have that be as our consultant for research to make everything was accurate to in the real world. But right now we don't have the plan to have the dolphin breathe in the surface. It's kind of like semi-accuracy. We think that might influence the rhythm of a storytelling, and we decide not to give the freedom to the player to allow them to do that. Thank you.
So I really, I found your description of the red tide really interesting. I'm curious, does it present as obstacles that we dodge, or is it going to be an environmental effect that as we play the game, it is overtaking us? Yeah, which way are you going with that and why?
So I would say for our game design, initially we decide to have the static obstacles and the moving obstacles so that the players can have some more complex design. And right now, for the red tide, some of them are obstacles that stay there, and some of them are moving forward towards the player. So that it will be more and more difficult for them to dodge more and more different kind of red tide. Yeah, thank you.
It's time. Thanks, team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, we are Team Espresso, and this is our team. I'm Yuxing, this is Yichen, Anna, Polly, and Patrick. Our instructors are Jonathan and Scott. So our project is a short narrative and mechanisms-driven game that provides an expressive interactive experience iterated on multiple rapid prototypes and playtests. And our goal is to design and develop an expressive and interactive game that could be submitted to the ETC Festival and other interactive festivals outside ETC. So our target audience will be the guests in the festivals, and our platform will be on PC. So speaking of interactions, we firstly thought about using the unique controller, and with an interest in the history of body snatching in the 18th century, we have found that using the shovel to dig graves can be a unique action that people don't usually do in reality or in games. So based on that, we have narrowed down to 3 game pitch ideas. And we did brown boxing to playtest our prototypes. And we present those prototypes to the quarters, and we have received a lot of feedback. So mostly the feedback is about the lack of physical feedback of using the shovel to dig, because it don't feel like people is really digging something. And also there are limitations on the shovel, this unique controller, because this shovel, a few actions can be done with this unique controller, while our design of the game mechanisms need to be designed like fully based on this unique controller. And also we have received feedback that our prototypes are not expressive enough. So according to those feedbacks and our prototypes we have found that the limitation of our shovel, the unique controller, limits our design of the game mechanisms. So we decided to shift our focus from the unique controller to the design of the game mechanisms and gameplay more. And also, the history background of body snatching and the symmetry theme remind us of the fictional character, Dr. Frankenstein, who was also created almost in the same era. So we decided to our direction to be a combination of the history of body snatching and the fantasy of Dr. Frankenstein together, and we have developed some digital prototypes. So next, Anna will talk about the history background and our narrative design.
Great. So as Yuxin mentioned previously, our initial prototypes were based on the historical background of the resurrectionists. They were body snatchers or body stealers that would go into cemeteries, steal bodies, and then sell them to medical professionals or anatomists. Since it was very hard to come by a body legally for medical research, a lot of doctors or students would either steal the bodies themselves, become the body snatchers, or hire resurrectionists in order to do so. So another inspiration that we have is, of course, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It is, for those not familiar, about a scientist who goes out to steal bodies and then assemble them into a creature that he then brings to life. Some of our other inspirations are Young Frankenstein. It is a movie in 1974. And it is a comedy that is a parody of the Frankenstein genre or horror genres in early cinema in general. And another inspiration for the art direction is Corpse Bride. It is a movie that deals with the dead and death and has very artistic, cartoony, yet very also creepy imagery. And so the logline for our story is as follows. When Dr. Frankenstein tasks his assistant Igor with helping him create the perfect body for his creature, Igor must steal the body parts necessary and assemble them according to the doctor's wishes in order to create prototypes for the creature before he displeases Dr. Frankenstein enough to fire him from his job. And our setting and genre, our setting is London in 1869. And our genre is a horror comedy. We want the players to feel amused and find humor in the creepy imagery and the themes of death and decay. But we still want them to have a little bit of a thrill of like having creepy imagery in the game. So here are our main characters. One is Igor, and he is the player character. He is the one that is tasked to steal bodies from a cemetery and then assemble them into different types of creatures, whereas Dr. Frankenstein is Igor's boss and the character that gives the player his missions on what specific body parts he wants Igor to dig up and what characteristics those body parts should have. And our main controlling idea for the narrative is lack of power to acquisition of power. Igor starts out having very little power. He is under Dr. Frankenstein's thumb. But as he progresses throughout the story and assembles more of these creatures and does more of the work, he gradually acquires enough power to overthrow Dr. Frankenstein and eventually become the new Dr. Frankenstein in his stead. And now, Patrick is going to talk about the demo.
Thank you, Anna. So I'm going to show you guys a digital prototype of our demo. No, wait, a demo of our digital prototype. But yeah, here right now showing is the dialogue system in our game. So Dr. Frankenstein will tell you guys about his requirements. So it requires the player to sneak into the graveyard and then dig out body parts to build his monster. And as well, he says the creature that he dreamed of, it has astonishing strength. So the player needs to build a body that has like really strong strength. So either like very strong arms or strong legs. So the player can read the epitaph of the graves of the tombstone, and then this one says best carpenter in their town. So it's like a carpenter, so it might have an arm or something in this tombstone. As we dig it out, it does have an arm. So the player can dig out, read epitaphs, and then dig out body parts from the tombstone. Along with, they have to try to avoid the guard. This is a placeholder for now, but yeah, they have to avoid the guard since you're digging bodies in a graveyard. But yeah, if you get caught by the guard, then your experience in this map ends. The next part of our game experience is the body assemble part. So players will be able to assemble the body based on the body parts they got from graveyard, and then try to meet Dr. Frankenstein's requirements. And then based on how they perform, there will be different endings and then comments from Dr. Frankenstein. And next, I'll hand it off to game design to Yi-Chen.
Okay, now let's talk about the game design part. Our game had like 3 levels in total, and each level had the same 4 parts. The first is get the request from the Dr. Frankenstein, and then player need to go to the graveyard to dig out the body parts. After that, player need to assemble all the body parts and get the feedback from the doctor. According to the feedback, players will know if he can get into the next level or not. And after all 3 levels complete, the game will finish. About the gameplay, our game will have mainly 2 stages. The first stage is the Grave Explorer. We set our perspective at 2.5D because our team is good at 2D art, but from the programmer side, we have never done the 2.5D before, so we want to try it. While player in the graveyard, they need to determine which tomb may have the body parts that possibly reach the goal by reading different epitaph. And the core game mechanics in the games are hiding and enemies. There will be a guard patrolling along the design road. We make this enemy because we want make a tense environment to make players to realize their activities are stealthy, and also players can hide in the bush to avoid the guard's attention. For our second stage is the body assembly part. According to the doctor's requirement, players need to determine which body parts they need to assemble together and reach the goal. And we set up 3 different properties: strength, intelligence, and stamina. The arms and legs represent the strength value, and the head represents the intelligence, and the torso represents the stamina. The player, for now, we just set the maximum value to the body parts, which is the 10. For example, if the doctor wants the astonishing strength, which is the 40 strength in total, so player needs to assemble at least 4 arms or legs to reach the goal. But next step, we will have set different values in the body parts, like the weak arms only have 3 strength values. From the paper prototype to a digital prototype, we received some feedbacks from faculties and EDCers. The most interesting part in our games is the assemble body parts, which the player can assemble the body in any way they like. But the not interesting part is the digging up the grave, which player need to check the tomb one by one and determine which they want to dig out or not. And someone don't like the maze map because it's like the procedure generated map. And next, I will hand it to Polly to talk about the level and map design.
Thank you, Yi-Chen.
Okay, so Yichun talked about the game loop earlier, and it's easily understandable why procedure generated map wasn't working for us. Because the generated map is offering player this puzzle of finding the way out, and that's against our goal. And we're trying to give player the task of exploring the map and as well as making their own decision. That's why after playtesting, we decided on going with the fixed map with 3 different levels. So our designer did research on Victorian cemeteries and found this Highgate Victorian Cemetery as our inspiration for our layout. Highgate Cemetery is a cemetery that's located in North London, England, and it's one of the 7 cemetery gardens that was built in the 1830s in response to the serious burial crisis that's due to the population explosion over the Industrial Revolution. And after researching the cemetery, we took 3 areas of the cemetery to create 3 different layouts for our 3 different levels. And after getting requests from Dr. Frankenstein, a new level will be unlocked and opened up for players to explore. So in each of these levels, player will explore the map, avoid obstructive factors, compare and make decisions to complete the graveyard run. Then it's fun part of creating your own creature like you saw before. We're working on prototypes that indicates the increasing curves of risk and rewards, but only through many upcoming playtests we can then verify if our gameplay is fun for the players. And now I'm gonna briefly talk about our art direction. So as mentioned before, we're going with this expressive 2.5D presentation, and Don't Starve became one of our important art references because it shared this same tone we're hoping to achieve, which is humorous horror and handcraft texture. With these direction in mind, our art team started to produce 3D sprites and assets in a quirky hand-drawn art style. You can find some of them on the left side of the screen. Although 2.5D isn't a rare formula in the industry, but it's still a great challenge for our team. For example, it's hard to create a scene with depth with 2.5D formula, and we're also facing some technical difficulty with the colliders. So we're still experimenting with different designs of the collider to see which one would serve our gameplay better. Now Patrick is gonna talk about our future plans.
Thank you, Polly. So now for our future plans, now we nailed down our main gameplay. We're going to try to explore more in the alternative controller parts because we believe since our project is mainly for festivals, we believe alternative controllers can make our games more interesting, along with bigger maps and more levels for the player so they have more to explore. And also, we will plan to conduct more playtesting for people aging 16 and above so we can get more feedback for our experience. Also, we plan to add in more sound assets along with UI elements so we can make our game more complete. And now this is all for our presentation. Thank you guys, and now we're open for questions.
Yeah, okay, I'm glad to see one of your challenges is exploring, designing, and implementing possible unique controllers, since that was part of the mandate of your project. And when you started to go in this very interesting direction, it was unclear how that was going to actually blend in. I'm imagining you probably already have ideas. Can you talk a little bit about what you're even thinking about exploring for controllers, if it's different from the ones you've already explored in the first half, or variations, or what?
So at the moment, we do plan using some off-the-shelf products, like things like air mouses, so we can player can control them free in the space. We also plan to look into objects like light detection on Arduinos and stuff to make it more unique, and then we can kind of build them up from scratch. Thinking about mainly for using navigation and map purposes, using it as a mouse in the air, so they can kind of not only navigate, but also being able to drag things around in the body assemble scene. So more of control, point and control type of controllers.
Yeah, it seems like your gameplay, you can do a little bit of this, you can do a little bit of that. what is the main kind of guiding force in your decision making in terms of the gameplay?
So the main decision making is based on like the requirements of Dr. Frankenstein. So he'll give the player like requirements for each night. So you need to find like corresponding body parts and assemble them together to like satisfy Dr. Frankenstein. And the main loop of the game is like from a narrative perspective, it's kind of like from a process of gaining power and like getting yourself strong, and
The idea is also that like Igor is going out, acquiring these body parts that he then assembles into something that he creates himself. So we want the player to feel both empowered and like exercise their creativity when they're creating the monsters, and having this challenging level beforehand that forces the player to make decisions about which body parts they want to keep for later use, is like emphasizing that creativity and that ownership the player has over the creation.
If this is going to play at festival and let's say there's a crowd of people watching, how do you plan for adding variety so that I just watch 3 people play it? I know all of the body parts are. I know what Dr. Frankenstein wants. I win every time. So, you know, is the game going to change per player?
So we are aiming for festivals that puts our users or players to like up to a one-time experience. So we weren't really thinking about replayability because we make assumptions of like player are just gonna play it once in a festival setting. But we could look more into having procedure-generated module, like we talked about this as a team before, and that could still be in the picture when we have a working prototype that proves our game designs and other aspects. Thank you.
I love the narrative story. I'm wondering, I think you said the game is set in 1869. Is there anything particularly significant about that choice of date or choice of year? And let me preface that by saying that the body snatching activities for medical students, medical professionals, really were dominant in the 1820s. And sorry, I'm getting into really geeky stuff, but the 1832 Anatomy Act really tried to curtail that. So I'm just wondering about the 1869 storyline. Is this an underground? The Act didn't eliminate body snatching as people thought it did, or is there something else going on there?
So we weren't really thinking the actual years having any significance except for aesthetic purposes, because a lot of like Gothic imagery set in the Victorian era, that's kind of where we wanted to set our story in as well, to up that like familiar horror aspect of the period. We could think about setting it in a different time period if it feels more right for the story, but right now that's what it is.
That's time. Thanks, team.
Thank you.
All right. Congratulations to everyone. Successful halves. Enjoy break. Well-earned break. And faculty, we're going to go over and talk about